What's up, NHL fans? Hope you had a great weekend. This is Morning Cup of Hockey presented by Betway. If you're going to place a bet, bet on Betway. Please play responsibly. And remember, you must be 19 years of age or older. That's Kobe Cohen. I'm Johnny Lazarus. We got a lot to get into. The New York Rangers, Florida Panthers, and Dallas Stars all punched their tickets to the conference finals over the weekend. We got Game 7 between the Edmonton Oilers and the Vancouver Canucks to look forward to tonight, even though it's at 9 p.m. And I know for a fact my co-host is going to have something to say about that start time. Colby, what do you think about the 9 p.m. puck drop for Game 7 on a Monday night?
It just doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like, why, when you have one game, are you putting it on at 9 Eastern? I mean,
but in Vancouver, it's 6 o'clock local.
Yeah, I understand that, but the reality is for a sporting event is you can have, I don't know, 18,000 people live watching, and then you can have millions of people watching on television. So usually the television audience is the one that is actually catered to, especially when you're talking about national television. These aren't, local TV start times where the teams are kind of pulling the strings. These are start times that are being provided to them by the NHL. I remember working in Chicago. The team had control over their home starts, 7:30, or for weekend games, 1, 4, 7, whatever it is. And then they worked with their own local TV partner. So this is different. And yeah, like it's ridiculous. Like, why not have it at 6? You're right. It would be a 5 p.m. local start in Vancouver, but who are you kidding? The city of Vancouver, it's like high school football in Texas. Like, the whole city is going to shut down for this hockey game. It is going to be, a party in Vancouver to get ready for this game. So, look, I know we're going to talk about the Rangers series. We're going to talk about what this means for Carolina and all of the above with Dallas, the Bruins, Panthers, like a lot. We've got to do a couple of postmortems on this show today on top of close out some series. And then, yes, we're going to have Tyler Yaremchuk from Oilers Nation come on around 9:30, and he'll preview Edmonton, Vancouver with us. We'll spend the second part of the show today talking a little bit about that. But, there was a bunch of news over the last couple of days in the NHL. And, this is not a time where you generally see a ton of news going on. It's usually centered around, the NHL teams that are still playing. But the Toronto Maple Leafs hired a head coach, and that was something I think everybody was waiting to see. And I think that single domino has a pretty large ripple effect on the other situations around the NHL. So Craig Berube goes to Toronto. There's a lot of talk about the rest of his staff. What do you think of that hire? Do you think he's the right fit for that media, for that fan base, for that locker room? What was your kind of reaction to that hire? Because I think the rumor was that Toronto actually wanted Joel Quenneville, which makes a lot of sense to me, by the way. Joel Quenneville would have made the most sense to me for the Toronto Maple Leafs, where I think Berube is probably the close second, number 2.
Yeah, I feel like Berube is the obvious choice, right? I think when you look at the names that are available and the names that are out there, were they waiting for a potential chance at Rod Brind'Amour? Like, was that even talked about? Do you know anything about that?
I don't know. The more I talk to people, the more I kind of heard that, like, the whole Rod Brind'Amour thing was really not a thing. It was always going to get done. I think
we talked about Rod in Seattle with Ron Francis. That was like,
I think he probably could have gone that route if money was the most important thing to him. My guess is Seattle would have paid him the most. They have very, very deep pockets out there, that ownership group. But I think for Rod, I think there's more to it. I think the whole pie matters, and not just the money pie. And some guys, the money pie, and some guys, it's the family pie or the security pie or the, all of those things. And I think, Brind'Amour signs a 5-year contract extension and probably has an 80% chance of surviving all 5 of those years, which how many coaches can you really say that for in the NHL? How many guys right now in the NHL can you basically guarantee will have their jobs for the next 5 years without some sort of scandal? Is there any?
I mean,
Is
there's
John
been
Cooper, maybe John Cooper,
there's
maybe,
been
but
how
even
many
5
firings
years,
in the last like
even
3 years?
5 years even sounds like a long time for him.
Mhm. There's been so many firings, I feel like, in the last, however many years, but, it's been wild. And back to your original question, Berube again, like, does it make sense? Yes, right? Is he the right guy? You won't really know until you see it. It's so hard to really say that this guy is the perfect hire. Like, you know, teams always have to either adjust to their new coach or the new coach has to come in and just change the standard and change the foundation of what was already there. And it was clear that Toronto needed something new, right? And I don't know if it's a new voice or maybe just a new culture, maybe is the word. And culture is a term we throw around all the time, but Sheldon Keefe was there for quite some time, and that can get repetitive. So no matter who you bring in for this job, there needs to be the culture change, right? So maybe the X's and O's, he might not be the right guy or the best fit, but as far as the voice behind the bench goes and creating that foundation and building a culture and finding a new standard to get to, I think maybe that is the right decision for a guy like Berube. But until we see them actually play on the ice, you won't really know. But the voice, I think, is the right choice. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, but I think you're missing some of the bigger points in the fact that Craig Berube is a guy that's not afraid to go head to head with top talent. Craig
Mhm.
Berube is a guy who, if he doesn't like the way Mitch Marner's playing, it's not going to be a leash where Mitch
No
Marner can just,
sugarcoat. Yeah.
the inmates are not running the asylum or whatever the old expression is when you have Craig Berube. And I'm not saying that's how it was with Sheldon Keefe, but I think Sheldon Keefe's hands were a little bit tied at times. I think some of that core four had kind of been enabled by Kyle Dubas. Those were his guys. They were his signings. And so I think that definitely made it a little more difficult for Sheldon Keefe to grab those guys' attention when he needed to. And then at the end of Keefe's tenure, he started to do it a little bit more. And it probably was uncomfortable for those guys because it's just not something that they were used to. So, look, I think Berube's the right call. I ultimately think Quenneville would have been the best call just because the cachet that he brings with all the Stanley Cups. But, he continues to not be eligible to come back to coaching, which I know we got into and we've already talked about, how we feel about that whole situation with Frank and so on and so forth. So we don't need to continue to go down the line and do that. I do think you got to give Craig Berube some I wonder what the right word I'm looking at. I guess credit, but that's kind of a lame word to use. Is when you look at that Blues team, that was a team that really was a committee. There was not superstar after superstar on that team. There were no big time.
I mean, you can say like Tarasenko was the guy,
but Vladimir Tarasenko has never been
no, he's not like
in that category of like elite superstar in the NHL. He had his moments where he was an all-star caliber player. And obviously you can't forget about Alex Pietrangelo, who I think is, one of the best defensemen in the league. But, when I say superstar, we're talking about the Austin Matthews types players and the McDavids. Like, so he took a team that was really a team and he had them all buy into a concept. And then he got great goaltending from Jordan Binnington. And look, I'll go back to this. It's hard to win without good goaltending. And Toronto didn't lose this year because of goaltending. They didn't lose because of defense, but it is something that has plagued the Toronto Maple Leafs for a number of years. That goaltending position. And before the show started, I actually looked up the goaltending market, the UFA market. There's not a lot of great names on there. I mean, I think Toronto's best opportunity for a big time goaltender would be to go make a trade for Linus Ullmark with the Bruins. And we'll get to that because I do want to do a little postmortem on the Bruins, talk Panthers a little bit later in the show. But I think the Leafs made the right call here. I think Chief has enough of a, I don't give a shit attitude where I don't think the media is going to sway him. I don't think the fan base is going to sway him. The pressure of being in Toronto, which we all know is immense. I think Craig Berube will do a good job with that. And I think that is really important. I think Quenneville would have done an even better job because what is he like
not letting the media create the narrative. Like he'll keep it in check.
Yeah. And the other thing you have to remember here is like, you know, he's won a Stanley Cup, but he's never been in a market like that. You know, Berube, St. Louis and Toronto are very different markets. Even Philadelphia, which is an absolute, you know, boiling point type of market, is still not Toronto, right? It's just not. So they made the right hire, and you know, they move on, and we see who they go after and target as the rest of their staff. And we'll see how he rounds that out.
Mm-hmm. All right. Do you want to finish up with some more news, or do you want to go into, you know, some of the games that happened over the weekend and the teams that are moving on?
Well, no, like there's news that happened. Let's stay with the news before we go into the games. I think everybody saw the rumors about Matvei Michkov, the Flyers' high-end overall pick, first-round pick that I believe would have probably gone a lot higher if there were more clarity around his situation. The rumors are that he is, you know, the interesting thing is that SKA, which is the Red Army team, you know, that is Russia, the KHL's like government-owned team, basically. They have had his rights for a few years, but they have been loaning him to Sochi. So he hasn't even been playing for SKA, you know? And so it's weird because they're like, well, you can't leave, but you're not good enough to play for us. And so the rumor is that they're willing to take a buyout and let him come to Philadelphia, and, you know, start his career in Philadelphia. Now, apparently he favorited the tweet online about the story. The player did himself. So that obviously gives you an indication something's going on. I did text the general manager from the Flyers, Danny Briere, and I jokingly asked him if he's heading to Russia today with a bag of cash, you know, and I said, maybe you should just send one of your boys. And then I just asked him, are the rumors true? And he said, we're sorting through it. Again, they're probably dealing with a negotiation right now with a Russian team, some sort of buyout situation. And I don't know if the player pays the buyout. I don't know if teams pay the buyout. You know, we don't know if we'll ever know the truth of where the money and who the money and is it cash and whatever. But it does sound like there's some legs to this, you know, Michkov coming to Philadelphia for next season, which would give the fans a lot of excitement. But I wonder, like, how is this teenage Russian player going to fare with a guy like John Tortorella? I mean, that could be problematic because we've seen Russian players come over and it takes them some time sometimes to get comfortable, get acclimated, smaller ice, new language. I mean, everything about it is really challenging. So I'd be really interested, Johnny, just to see if he does come over here, how's that relationship going to go?
I would think that Tortorella, I want to say he'd be a little bit more lenient and understanding, but he probably won't, right? Like there's no extra leash because of that, right? Like he's going to have this kid either come in and buy in or he's not going to play. And I think with that, if it does go well, Michkov could be that much more dangerous, right? Like if he does buy into what Tortorella's, the message he spreads and sends, you know, Michkov, we obviously haven't seen a whole lot of, you know, I know there's KHL highlights that always float around on social media and stuff. But
you never want to base, and I tell people this all the time.
Yeah, but that's all I'm based. But I never sit down and watch him play, so that's all I can.
People are asking me about Demidov. I'm getting a lot of tweets from Chicago Blackhawk fans asking me, would you take Demidov or Lev Shunov? And I'm like, listen, I've seen Lev Shunov play a number of times. Demidov, I've seen highlights. I don't base what I think about a player off their highlights on social media. Okay? Like, so I got to sit down and watch the kid play before I tell you what I truly believe about a guy like that. And that's kind of Michkov. Like,
well, that's what I was saying. Like, you see the skill in the highlight reels that are posted, and if you can mix that with what Tortorella wants from their team, it could be a very dangerous player. If a skill guy is playing balls to the walls every night, you know, kind of playing a playoff style, because that's kind of Philly pretty much played somewhat of a playoff style in the regular season. I would say. And if you have a guy with that much skill doing it, he'll be that much more dangerous. But again, like Kobe, I'm not going to sit here and bullshit anyone. Like I didn't watch Michkov play this year in the KHL. Like all I did was see highlights
Right, but
on
that's
social media.
you. But a lot of people
Yeah.
do. A lot of
Yeah.
people watch him play. A lot of people are streaming his games.
Mhm.
Information on watching tape on players is easier than ever. So you're one person, but a
Yeah.
lot of people do. I mean, Bill Meltzer, who covers the Flyers, he's their team writer, reporter, content producer. He watches him. I mean, we've talked about it, and we had Kevin Kurz on the show. From
A while
who
ago.
covers the
Yeah.
Flyers, and he watches them. So people do watch. They really do. They really do. I do see in the chat someone asked us about Scott Arniel becoming the head coach. It was Jay Miller. What do you think about Scott Arniel as the Jets head coach? Was that officially announced, or is that
I don't
still
think so.
just? I've seen the insiders' reports on it. But I didn't know that was officially announced. All
I don't
signs
think
are
it
pointing
was.
to that. And just to answer your question, Jay, I really don't know much about him. I've heard mixed reviews from players, like very, very mixed reviews from players. I've yet to hear someone tell me they really love the guy, which again, that's not the be all end all. I will tell you this: his nephew, Jamie Arniel, was my teammate for a number of years in the American Hockey League, and him and his uncle were not that close. They did not. It didn't seem like they had the closest relationship. So I don't really know or have a big opinion on that. And we'll see what happens. Once that gets announced, I think that's something, maybe we'll try to get someone on the show that's played for him and try to get a little bit more information. So, that was kind of what happened. Obviously, everybody saw Rod Brindamore's contract extension. I don't think that was something that was that surprising. I think that I thought that whole thing was leaked purposefully just to put a little bit of pressure on the Canes owner. But ultimately, he gets a 5-year deal. He gets his whole staff back. I'm sure he got a nice raise. And the rumors about Rod to Seattle, Toronto, wherever else, we can officially put those to bed.
All right, let's get into some playoff talk because we got Tyler coming on in about 13 minutes. We got to go over everything that went on over the weekend. We'll start with the Rangers, but we won't go in too long with them. That game 6, they're down 3-1 going into the third. I think any Ranger fan is lying if they said they thought they'd actually come back and win that game. It looked like Carolina was pretty much in control, although the Rangers found their game once Chris Kreider scored that first goal. A bounce back game for a guy like Jack Roslovic, who we were very hard on after game 5. He makes 2 big plays in the third period, helps set up the first Kreider goal, helps set up the game-winning goal. But Colby, your thoughts on that third period, because I could speak on behalf of most Ranger fans. It was more of a pause for relief than I think it was a celebration that they won that game. Because if it was coming back for game 7 at the Garden, that would have been the most hostile MSG crowd I could have ever imagined. But what did you make of that win, that game, and that collapse, let's call it, by the Carolina Hurricanes?
Wait, so you said that would have been the most hostile what?
Crowd at MSG for game 7.
You think?
I mean, the Ranger fans booed him off the ice in game 5.
Is there such a thing as a hostile?
What are you calling
crowd?
it a quiet building?
I mean, it's not a quiet building, but it certainly doesn't, hold up to some of the other buildings that I think are
when it's loud, it's loud, but it's not consistently loud throughout the game. And I will say that.
Well, look, the first time that I was concerned about the New York Rangers in that entire series was when they were down late, going into that third period. I said, this is not good.
Not good.
Because they came out lifeless. They played, I'd say, a period and a half of lifeless hockey. Vinny Trocheck looked tired. Kreider looked tired. They just looked like they ran out of steam.
Martinook robs that Lindgren breakaway on the goal line. And
you're
like,
thinking to yourself, geez, everything's going wrong for the New York Rangers right now. Your boy Loff, I mean, if we're being objective, after he had his little stretch where he had his 4 goals or 3, what is it, 4 goals in 3 games?
Yeah.
The rest of the series, he vanished.
Yeah,
it was like the beginning of the series before he scored his goals, and it was like the first round for him. Now he's put up a bunch of points, and good for him, because if you want to be a point a game player, when you're not playing well, you got to get on the score sheet. That's what elite, players do. to be 100-point type of guys. And I'm not making a joke right now.
Yeah.
When you have a bad stretch of hockey, if you're a 100-point player, you get on the board. So he's got on the board. So let's give him that. But yeah, he got very quiet those last couple of games and kind of, became a little bit more of a non-factor. Look, the New York Rangers are a good team. They've proven that they can come back and win under difficult circumstances away. 2 games in Carolina, they won the series. I think the belief that they now have in the locker room, because they came back like that. Again, I always say this, as a team, you can all talk and lie and be bullshit. But, in order to actually have the belief that you can make a comeback and do something like that, you need to actually do it, right? So, the New York Rangers get that goal from Kreider. It's a great little highlight there from Sportsnet. And then the train started rolling for the New York Rangers. And, this is a look at the game's was this the tying goal?
Tying goal, yeah.
And this was from the TNT highlight package as Jordan Staal, their captain, looks on from the penalty box. But, this was big time because this gives the New York Rangers confidence, Johnny, that they're never truly out of a hockey game. And having walked the walk of that is so much different than talking the talk. And against the Florida Panthers, they're going to be down at some point, right? So to truly believe we can come back from anything against anyone, that's a dangerous feeling for a team in the playoffs.
Let me ask you a question, because obviously I'm more biased on this question, but where do you put Chris Kreider in the playoff clutch conversation? And I want to tell you a stat too that's pretty wild, and it has nothing really to do with these playoffs because the Rangers haven't faced elimination. But a stat that I found over the weekend, in NHL history, players when facing elimination, Chris Kreider is tied with Mark Messier for the most goals. 16 goals in 29 games when facing elimination. So Chris Kreider and Mark Messier are the 2 at the top when it comes to most goals in the Stanley Cup playoffs when facing elimination. Like, this guy is pretty clutch, and I think it kind of goes unnoticed nationally until a moment like this happens where you score a natural hat trick in the third period.
I think you just answered the question you asked me.
I feel like, I know you give me the shit for being the Ranger fan and the fan hat on, but do you really hear people talking about that nationally, that Chris Kreider is this clutch playoff performer?
I don't know the answer to that question. Yeah. Here's the thing. I've always followed Chris Kreider's career. I played against Chris Kreider, during his coming out party years at Boston College. And I've said this before when we're watching a Rangers game to my wife. I said, this guy has always been incredibly hard to play against, just with his size and his strength. And, he used to move really well. He doesn't move quite as well anymore. Now that he's turning into an old man, 34, you see the gray in his beard. But this guy shows up when it matters. He's been doing that for a while. He did it in Beanpot games, and he did it in Hockey East tournaments. And then he went right into the NHL playoffs that year, and he did it for the New York Rangers as a rookie. He continues to do it. And you see the way Henrik Lundqvist talks about him on TNT, the admiration that Hank has for him. Which I think really tells you all that you need to hear, one very well-respected player to another. So, look, he stepped up in a game where, again, I started to worry that he looked tired. He looked slow. The Rangers looked out of gas, and they found a way to win. Igor made saves when they needed them, and Freddie Anderson did not. And it makes you wonder if that's a position that Carolina looks like they need to really visit in the offseason, because it just doesn't look like they've got the goaltending to make a real run in the playoffs.
I see a lot of questions about rumors that the Rangers had the flu going around their room. I believe that was actually true for both teams. I heard a couple guys were sick in both locker rooms, so it's not like the Rangers got through this crazy virus that was going around the room and Carolina didn't. I think there were some guys that were sick on both sides. So just from that rumor, like that's what I had heard. I don't know if that's confirmed, but I heard there were some guys that were sick on both sides. Just from people in the chat that were asking.
We got Tyler here. We're gonna bring Tyler Yaremchuk in, who hosts Oilers Nation, all their coverage. He's been on the road a lot. He's been in visiting buildings. He's been at the home buildings. He's got a great vantage point to all these, because he's actually, during Edmonton home games, he's down with the fans, which is cool. And then he kind of sits in his media chair the rest of the week. But before we do, I want to bring Tyler in, but I want to talk a little Dallas too, and we'll do it with Tyler because he's dialed into the Western Conference, and he gets those early start times out west. So he gets to see these Western teams all year. So let's bring Tyler in and let's start with the Dallas Stars before we get into Edmonton and Vancouver with him and just kind of get his opinion on that series and really what type of problem do the Dallas Stars cause for everyone else. Vic, go ahead and bring Tyler into the mix here. Tyler, as you're loading up here, we appreciate the fact that you're up early with us again. We went back to the well because there's an Edmonton Vancouver game 7, right? But before we get into that, how much of this Dallas Colorado series did you watch, and what kind of problem are the Dallas Stars for the rest of the NHL, including after your Oilers win tonight, the Edmonton Oilers?
First off, Colby, the sun comes up at like 5:40 in the morning in Edmonton this time of year. I've been awake for over an hour. It's the best part about living in Edmonton, man. The sun doesn't set right now it's May. The sun's not set until like 9:45. In June, the sun doesn't set till like 10:15, man. Wow. It is the absolute best.
Are you not going to the game tonight?
No, I'm not going tonight. I stuck it out in Edmonton for game 7. We got like watch
probably
parties
hosting,
and stuff.
Yeah, watch parties are probably better. Yeah.
Anyways, the Dallas Stars, man, like the thing that concerns me, if fingers crossed the Oilers are able to punch their ticket and move on, is just on any given night, they have a different one of those top 3 lines take over the hockey game, right? And the thing that, I think makes Edmonton dangerous, makes them more dangerous than Vancouver is when they got McDavid and Draisaitl split up, they have 2 superstars on 2 lines that can take over a game. But you look at Dallas with that forward depth, and I honestly think the forward depth of Dallas is good enough to negate the Oilers' biggest advantage, which is those 2 top lines, right? And then you look how good Dallas's blue line is, miles better than the Oilers. You look at how good Jake Ottinger is. He's relatively consistent. Again, that negates anything the Oilers got going on between the pipes, which granted isn't a whole heck of a lot. So Dallas is scary, man. Like they're going to be massive, massive favorites, whether they play Vancouver or Edmonton, probably from like a betting perspective, probably slightly smaller favorites against the Oilers, but still I'd peg them at like -150, -160 to win that series. They're like really damn good.
Tyler, I want to focus on the Oilers and we can come back to the Stars too if Colby wants to talk about the Stars a little bit more, but I was having this conversation with some friends yesterday, big Knicks fan. Knicks were in a game 7, and all my friends were like, game 7, best 2 words in sports, right? Well, that's unless your team is playing in it. So for you right now, is a game 7 the best 2 words in sports, or are you nervous? And for this game specifically, kind of like a 2-parter question here. Is this more of a legacy game for Connor McDavid, or is this all on Stuart Skinner's performance?
Man, that second part is really, really interesting because I think Connor McDavid,
you feel like he's done enough, right?
Yeah, and he's going through some stuff right now. Like he's hurt. I heard some rumblings that he might have been one of the guys that was fighting a bit of a virus, but we know Connor McDavid is playing through some sort of an injury right now, whether it's the same one he dealt with a couple of times during the regular season or something new. He is not himself right now. I think it's why you're seeing him not shoot the puck as much. Is this a legacy game? For the fact he was never been to a cup final in his career. I remember when Alex Ovechkin was kind of going through this same thing, right? Where he just couldn't get over the hump. A lot of the people looked at him and it was wrong because he always produced in the playoffs, but it was like, oh, Ovi's not a winner. Ovi's not a winner. When you look at McDavid and what he's been able to do for this Oilers team, he's had his vintage playoff moments for this team. That goal in game 7 a couple years back against the LA Kings to cement that victory. Game 5 OT winner against the Calgary Flames to win the Battle of Alberta.
In game 6 against the Vancouver Canucks a couple nights ago.
Yeah, like Connor's had his moments, so I don't think he's under any more pressure than normal to go out and do Connor McDavid-esque things. And quite frankly, I'm not even worried about Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl producing in this game. They've gotten it going a little bit at 5-on-5 now. Their power play, for whatever reason, is ice cold, but it's one of those things where like it's a matter of time until they have a game where they pop home 2 or 3 power play goals. So I think I'm more on the side of, hey, if Stuart Skinner is 870 or better, the Oilers probably win this hockey game.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's the ceiling, right? Or I guess not the ceiling.
That's the bar.
Yeah, the bar. Better word.
How about the Dylan Holloway goal the other night? When that goal went in, Tyler, I thought of you immediately. And the reason for that being is because you on Oilers Nation have been pleading with management, coaching staff, whether it was Woodcroft, whether it's now who was before Woodcroft? I don't even remember.
McClellan.
McClellan, Woodcroft, and now Knobloch. You want Dylan Holloway to be given more of an offensive opportunity. You have been asking for this on every platform Oilers Nation produces content for. And boy, did he score a big time goal the other night. Before the show, Johnny called it Connor McDavid-like. I rolled my eyes at Johnny because
I didn't even say that. I said that could have been Connor McDavid if he didn't have the number on the back.
Could have been Connor McDavid. Listen, I always tell Johnny, you get too excited about things, so you lose your credibility on them. But you had to be smiling when this play was happening, Tyler, because this is your guy right here.
Yeah, I was. So I sit right down in that corner where he scored. I almost jumped so high, I was almost up in the second deck.
Did you spill your beer on that goal?
Colby, where I sit, we have cup holders. Come on, give Oilers fans sit with
civilized.
But okay, to Johnny's kind of point there, like the reason I've always made this argument for Holloway, and I said countless times during the year, I said, take him, put him in a room with Leon Draisaitl and say, we are stapling you two together for 10 games. Figure it out. Because what do we know about Draisaitl? Like his best numbers at 5-on-5 are when he's playing with Connor McDavid. And while Draisaitl doesn't move at a super quick pace, he loves playing with guys who are quick on the rush. He loves those little setup plays and just watching him go. He's one of the best passers in the league. And that goal was the perfect example of why you should have stuck Dylan Holloway with Leon Draisaitl 5-6 months ago, right? Because if they learn each other's games a little bit more and Dylan Holloway gets comfortable, which he's getting more and more and more comfortable, I just think the potential for them to be a really, really strong duo for the Oilers is there. And it's why I made that goal is why I made the argument down the stretch into the playoffs. You need to play this guy as much as you maybe, if you're Chris Knobloch, don't want to take out a penalty killer or something or whatever. When you put guys with that first round skill and that high end ceiling in the lineup, you get payoff moments. You have those high ceiling moments. And, you know, he hasn't been bad defensively in the series like at all, as he had a couple of hiccups. Sure. But I think they've been barely noticeable. But you play guys with high end skill versus putting like a Matthias Janmark up in your top six. And every once in a while you get a game changing play. And what Holloway did there was give the Oilers a game changing play. So I've been loving what I've been seeing from him. The last 5-6 games in the regular season, he got more and more comfortable. So far in these playoffs, he's getting more and more comfortable. And I think if they advance, we're just going to get more moments like this from Holloway.
Well, and I did Holloway's games going back to college. He was a very high draft choice for a reason. Okay. He's got skill and he's won and he's played with other high end players, and those guys can usually figure it out. And I agree. I think when you look at the ice time disparity in the top and the bottom, that's been something that's been widely talked about. You know, they never get anything from their depth, but then you can make the argument, well, their depth never really gets on the ice. You know, ice time can get really, really heavy one way or the other. They certainly have never really been a three-line team consistently. They never really have for the last number of years since McDavid came around. So, look, I hope Holloway continues. I hope he's able to produce with Draisaitl, because I'm with you. I think that gives the Edmonton Oilers top 6 and even top 9 just such more of an offensive punch, because that's really where Holloway's strengths lie. Let me ask you about one other position player, a defenseman who, again, he's staying on the theme of our guys getting enough love. You asked me about Chris Kreider earlier in the show, Johnny. What about Evan Bouchard?
Yeah.
Does he get, and I know, he had a tough game.
Plus 10, Colby. Plus 10.
Whatever it was it game 5 where he had that rough? Yeah. Listen, you play the game long enough, you're going to have a play like that. But does he not get enough love for how good he is for this Oilers team and for how good he's been really this whole season? Like, he's really had a big time season, and not just offensively. I think it's really been in all three zones.
Yeah, I think he's gotten, as the year's gone on, if you were to watch an Evan Bouchard game from October and compare it to an Evan Bouchard game in late February, defensively, he's gotten miles better. And I know Oilers fans do, get on him quite a bit, and he's had some more famous defensive lapses so far this season. There was a moment against McKinnon. There was a moment against Matthews where Oilers fans jumped on him and were like, he's never going to be a top pairing defenseman. But the bottom line is he moves the puck better than any defenseman on the Oilers. And it's like not even close. And the best way for the Oilers to defend is to get the puck on the sticks of their high end forwards and get it as far away from their own zone as possible. And Evan Bouchard does that really well. And he had that nasty little turnover in game 5. It's whatever. If you're going to give me a guy who's going to make 85 elite passes and then there's going to be one hiccup in there, I'm going to take it because I want those 85 elite passes, right? So yeah, I've been loving what I've seen from Bouchard. I know a lot of people maybe outside of the Edmonton market like to sit there and go, well, he's playing with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Of course, he's going to rack up however many points and the power play points. But in this series alone, he's over a point a game if you just look at his even strength points in this series. He's got 4 even strength goals. He's got 5 game-winning goals in the last 2 playoff runs for the Edmonton Oilers. Only one other defenseman in the entire league has 2. Like, think about that. He's at 5, Noah Hannafin's at 2, and then I think there's 17 other guys who have 1. Like, he's been clutch for the Oilers. He gets his shot through in traffic, which is a massive, massive thing. I was used to watching Tyson Barrie on that power play, who loved just hammering it into shin pads all the time. So I don't think Bouchard gets enough love for just how good he is, regardless of the fact he plays with 97 and 29.
I was going to say also, he has the most shots on goal amongst defensemen in the playoffs too. I mean, it's only one more than I think Makar had, but still 37 shots in what, 11 games is pretty insane. But Tyler, Colby knows I like to create narratives. And I want you to get it. I want you to have a chance to like basically get ahead of this one. Colby, we kind of talked about it before the show started.
And I didn't agree with it, by the way.
Well, I'm trying to phrase it correctly here.
Go ahead, create your narrative and then let Tyler stomp all over it.
That's exactly what I'm going for. Outside of Edmonton, do you think it can be said that this is somewhat of a lose-lose for the Oilers? Because if they lose this game, it's another year not getting to the conference final. But if they win it, it's like, oh, well, they beat the Canucks without Besser and Demko. Like, you know, it's a Mickey Mouse series win. Can you get ahead of that narrative?
The look on
I'm giving him the chance. I'm giving him
everything. For those of you who are,
I'm giving him the chance right now, because if Edmonton wins tonight, I'm gonna say, well, they beat the Canucks without Besser.
For those of you who are audio only, the smirk and smug facial expression of Tyler Yaremchuk right now says everything you could ever need to know. But Tyler, I cede the floor to you.
I'm giving him the chance.
Well, I mean, yeah, but Johnny, you can go back through the last however many teams that won a Stanley Cup. You're telling me at some point none of those teams ran into another team that had a couple of injuries? And
I'm telling you from experience, when the Rangers went to the conference final, the conversation was, oh, well, they played Louis Domingue in the first round and Peter Kochetkov in the second round.
New York Marine in the chat says this is dumb and Johnny's getting dumber as he speaks. Okay. So, and I totally agree with New York Marine. This is ridiculous.
Well, New York Marine spelled dumb wrong.
Playoffs. All right. This is win. That's it. Not win against this guy or win against that guy. It's win. And that's it. End of story. Win the series. Nobody cares.
Do you guys swear on this show? I don't remember.
We do swear. Yeah.
Okay, Johnny, fuck
Call
the narrative.
Me a fucking idiot.
Like, why do you as an Oilers fan, if you're a guy in that room, whoever, who gives a shit? I mean, they could be throwing out the entire Abbotsford Canucks roster tonight, and I wouldn't care. I'd want them to beat Vancouver. And teams run into injuries, man. I mean, as I know it's not on par with Besser and Demko, but like the Oilers are without Adam Henrique, who they gave up a first-round pick for, Connor McDavid, Zach Hyman, Leon Draisaitl, Evander Kane. Those guys, Matthias Ekholm, 5 of their best players aren't taking skates right now. They are not skating on off days because they're banged up. Like, it's the playoffs. Everyone goes through shit. So, I mean, yeah, sure, the Canucks are missing Demko, but is goaltending the reason why this thing's going to 7, or why the Canucks have been able to push this to 7 or haven't won this series yet, I should say? Like, Shelovs has been fine, and Brock Besser, again, was great. Probably their best forward through this series, but they still have Pettersson, they still have Miller, they still have Hughes. Like, it's not like they're totally deteriorated. And I know, to be fair, after what I said about Edmonton, like, Hughes is playing through something. Who knows what's going on with Pettersson? Like, everyone is this time of year is my point. You take the wins how you can get it. I don't think if the Oilers win tonight in advance and they go to the Cup final, let's say, in a great little Tyler Yaremchuk fantasy world, no one's going to be sitting there being like, boy, are they ever lucky that the Canucks were banged up? They'll be like, no, Connor McDavid finally got to a Cup final.
There's also the easiest path to the conference final conversation, right? Dallas had to get through Vegas and get through Colorado. Like Edmonton's kind of, it's a little too easy for that.
Johnny's a big narrative guy, Tyler.
I just said that.
Johnny Drama, Johnny Sunshine and Rainbows. He's got a lot of different nicknames on this show, and he likes to just pull these narratives out of his ass, and they're not even slightly realistic. So all that matters is who wins this game 7. Look, we do hope. We all wish the best for Brock Besser. I think when you see a guy who's dealing with blood clots, it's funny. When I saw this story, it honestly gave me a flashback. I got my first, the first time I got called up by the Colorado Avalanche was about a week into the season. I think I'd played 7 games in the American League, and then I got called up. Ryan Wilson, who's a defenseman for the Avs, he had a really solid career. Ryan Wilson, he was an under the radar type of guy, but he had blood clots. And that's why I got called up. He had a blood clot in his leg. And I guess when you go on blood thinners for a blood clot, that's why you can't play with a blood clot, because the blood thinners, like, they thin out your blood. And then if you were to get hit or have some sort of potential head injury, your blood won't then clot because you're taking blood thinners. I'm obviously not a doctor. I know people in the chat are going to start giving me shit and giving me like doctor nicknames, which is totally fine. I'm just telling you what I remember from getting called up, and remember having that explained to me, like, why do blood clots matter that much? And it's because of the medication that you have to take. So look, no Brock Besser. It's playoffs, no big deal. I think Thatcher Demko is probably pretty close. I think if this series had gone a little bit of a different way, maybe you would have seen Thatcher Demko tonight, but they feel like they don't really need him right now, because they're getting good goaltending from Shelovs. Tyler, before we let you go, give us a prediction. Give us a score prediction.
Goal scorer.
How's the game going to go? What's your confidence level? Which Stuart Skinner are we going to see? I mean, lay us. We want to hear the Tyler Yaremchuk, Edmonton Oiler fan prediction tonight.
So what I want to see is the Oilers to come out in the first 10 minutes and be up 3-0, and then I can kick my feet up and enjoy my beer. But what I think we're going to see is a script really similar to Game 6, where this thing will be very, very tight for the first 30, 35 minutes of the hockey game. And then as long as Stuart Skinner is fine, again, not good, just fine. As long as Stuart Skinner is fine, the Oilers will pull away at some point. I think their power play is due to strike a little bit. I know Vancouver's made the really good adjustment of getting, I'd call it hyper aggressive on the PK. Like it's borderline swarm defense, which Oilers fans used to see, 10 years ago with Dallas Aikens. But like it is attack. And I think now the Oilers have had 8-9 power play attempts to feel out what the Canucks are doing a little bit. They're ready to maybe make their move on the counter punch there. So I think eventually the Oilers power play will take over and they'll win this game 4-1, 5-2, somewhere in that range. I don't think it's going to be a hold your breath in the last minute kind of game for the Oilers. I think they have enough going on here. And again, goaltending just has to be fine. As long as goaltending's fine, this is going to be a 3-goal win for the Oilers in some way. And anytime goal scorer, I did cash on a pretty juicy Dylan Holloway anytime bet last game. So tonight I'm going to say they go someone.
Hold on. Before you give us your pick, can I ask you a favor?
Yeah.
Can you not? I don't want you to make the pick now, but if you could text us the pick in the group chat, because we'll use your pick for our Betway segment, and we will use your pick for our listeners later in our show. We will let you be the official guest picker for the game. So throw it in our chat, Tyler. We'll read it out at the end of the show. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's all
because
good.
But you are good at this. I know your bets on Daily Faceoff Live hit more times than they don't, especially when you get into props. So, all right, look.
I want one more, though. I want one more. Just for people that haven't paid as close of attention to the series as Tyler. Like, you talk about the power play. How has the officiating been in this series? Like, do you think they'll get 2 or 3 chances tonight? Or you think it's going to be, whistles put away Game 7? Because we see that usually happen. So I'm curious on the officiating from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, trying to guess what you're going to get out of NHL officials on a night-to-night basis is
a good point. Yeah, it's a good point.
That is tough. I would say the NHL, the officiating so far in this series has been predictably bad, if that makes any sense. Like, it's been awful on both ends. Connor McDavid's gotten away with stuff. On the flip side, JT Miller's been hugging him through the neutral zone a bunch of times. Like, I think they've missed a ton of stuff on both sides. I think they've called a bunch of really soft stuff on both
What
sides.
did you think of what did you think of that Pettersson charging play where he like left his feet on the reverse hit? What did you think of that?
I was kind of the same as
How do you call that charge?
Well, if you read the rule book, it
guess,
actually
I
the
guess.
letter of the rule book says that's a penalty, but I just don't my eyes just say that shouldn't be a penalty. That's just a reverse hit.
Yeah.
But it's a reverse hit until he leaves his feet, right? Which I think I was in the same boat. I was like, why the hell are they calling that? Then I had a bunch of people tweet me the clipping of the rule, and it's like, oh, that is a penalty. I know people are like, well, he barely jumped. And it's like, okay, so what do you want? The ref in real time to be like, you're right, that was only a 4-inch jump, not a 7-inch jump. I can't call that. And then they're like, well, he barely touched Fogel. And honestly, if you look at the reverse replay, he gets elbow up by Fogel's head. Like,
he got up.
Yeah.
Pettersson got up there. He definitely did get up.
So again, you watch it and you go, wait, not a penalty. That's a hockey play. Then you read the rule and you go, wait, yeah, you can't jump into a guy to hit him. And honestly,
It's
like,
funny. I laughed. I thought it was kind of a funny play.
It was, but it's definitely a penalty. Like, that you cannot jump. You read the rule, you go, yep, the refs are supposed to know the rules. That was breaking the rules. Like, if anything, again, Pettersson got his elbow up on a guy and jumped, man. If his name was Rafi Torres, he'd be sitting for the rest of the playoffs.
Yeah, that's a good point. But Tyler, yeah, we want to thank you so much for hopping on here. And if the Oilers win tonight, you might have to come back on tomorrow morning. I don't know if that's a commitment you can make right now.
No, we're not asking him after a win to get up early.
I might not sleep if the Oilers win. Come on now.
You might not sleep if they get their Mickey Mouse Game 7 win.
Oh, shut up, Johnny.
All right, Tyler, we appreciate it.
You see what I deal with 4 days a week, Tyler? This is why I can't have a 5th day of the week on this show. And this is why I have to come on with you. And I will be with you on Wednesday, by the way. I don't know if news has made it to you yet on that, but I'll be hosting DFO Live with you on Wednesday. So hopefully hopefully you're in a good mood come Wednesday. And we're talking about previewing the Eastern and Western Conference Finals in a manner that's going to continue to make you a happy guy. So we're going to let you go here. Last thing I'm going to ask you, who's a better golfer? I saw you and Frank were out on the golf course this weekend. It's not even close.
I played like shit my worst round of the year, and I think I still beat him by 3. So it's
all right. Well, there you go. We'll have to ask Frank if he concurs on the show tomorrow. Thanks, Tyler. We appreciate it, and enjoy the game tonight.
Goyle, let's go.
We're rooting for you. So that interview with Tyler was brought to you by Parasso, the most complete choice for shaving and beard care made in Italy since 1948. Parasso has been a staple of Italian culture and barbershops globally for 4 generations. So get 15% off at parasso-usa.com with our promo code hockey15. That's in all caps, hockey15, 15% off at parasso-usa.com. Colby, is it time to do the postmortem for the Boston Bruins, or do we celebrate the Florida Panthers first? Which way?
I think we do a little. I think postmortem is where we go for the Boston.
And we
Bruins.
could save the Panthers for Wednesday. We can just preview the Panthers Rangers Wednesday, or maybe tomorrow. We can just really do Bruins stuff right now if you want. But you see that game happen. I thought Boston was actually going to squeeze it out. I really
so
did.
I
really
gave them. I think they deserve better in that game, and it's such a shame that their season ends on a soft goal because Jeremy Swayman was he's been the best, most consistently good goaltender in the playoffs to date. He really has. And so for them to lose on that goal, that was disappointing. I truly thought they were going to win that game and push the series. But you know what? Florida was a better team. I think the Bruins hung on a lot of the series for dear life. They clearly made adjustments later in the series. I think this is the highlight of the goal that we were just talking about by Gustav Forsling from the TNT broadcast the other night. And it just kind of, squeaks through under his blocker. It's kind of through a screen. It's a little bit of a turnaround shot, but
it went right through the defenseman's legs. I forgot what
Jeremy
Swayman
was just, it's just a shame for him to have played that well and that be the goal that ended the season for the Boston Bruins. It really did. I didn't think the Bruins really had much business continuing to push the series along. But again, they upped their game. They possessed pucks more. They got out of their zone. I thought Charlie McAvoy finished that series really, really well after kind of starting that series a little bit slow. in the way that he was playing. So look, I think Jim Montgomery will be back next year to be the coach of the Boston Bruins. I believe that. I think the fact that he was able to push that series to 6 games, and get through the first round solidified. I think the best choice Jim Montgomery made in the playoffs was Jeremy Swayman, and going with Jeremy Swayman and sticking with Jeremy Swayman. I thought that was his greatest coaching move that he made this year in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think, listen, had that gone 7, it would have been at that point. I know Boston wouldn't look at it this way, but that would have been playing with house money, right?
Yeah.
To take Florida to 7 games the way they would have done it. Like, that series should have been over in 5 games with how much better the Panthers really were.
And they're just a much better team. Look at the depth of the scoring.
Tyler's rattled. He just texted both of us.
Oh, he did? Oh, okay. I didn't.
He goes, in quotes, easiest path to the conference finals. Like the Rangers didn't get to play the fucking Washington Capitals.
See? Hey, listen, nobody
this
likes
is what I do. I just stir the pot.
Nobody likes your narratives. But look, I think we talked a little bit before the series and before the playoffs, and I said Jim Montgomery, Don Sweeney, they needed to have a good playoff good playoff situation for those two guys to return. I think they did. For what they had, I think that they did, and they now have a ton of money, a ton of free agents. Now they got to get Swayman re-signed. And, they need to make some upgrades. DeBrusk as a UFA, Van Riemsdyk, Shattenkirk. They got a long list of them, right? The question I have for you, Johnny, is what's going to happen with Linus Ullmark? Because his quotes on leaving day were like, I'm coming back here next year. I have a bone to pick. I have motivation. I want to play with Swayman. And he's got a no trade clause, a no movement clause. So, he controls his own destiny. And so you wonder what is going to happen with Linus Ullmark.
I mean, listen, he's 30 years old. If I'm him, like, is he just saying the right things? Is that really him?
You could just say nothing.
I guess. I have a hard time. They tried
to trade him once.
Yeah.
Okay. At the deadline. And now we know the story and the narrative, and he's still. Why would you just say the right things?
But it's one more year, and then he's a UFA. So yeah, he could do one more year and come back for one more, kick at the can with Swayman. But they're not going to re-sign him probably after that. Like, what if they just give him the backup treatment?
Right.
Like, who's to say they don't do that?
But what if he says, I have enough body of work and I want to be a UFA? Some guys want to be UFAs. They want to control their own destiny.
So he can do that.
About Mitch Marner. Like, when a player has no movement, okay, they're in control. They're in full control.
But Boston could literally say, we're not going to have you guys split the crease. We're going to give
so what
Swayman,
are they going to do? They're going to play Swayman 82 times?
They'll play him 58. 57.
I don't think you really think they're going to play him 60 times before playoffs. I don't. Why would they do that if they want a chance? Why would you wear your goalie down during the regular season when you have another guy who can capably win? Just to screw him?
I'm just saying they might just say that to him, so he wants to get traded.
And he might say, "Okay, let's roll the dice." He's not a dumb guy.
Yeah,
he's not sitting there thinking all of a sudden they're going to play Swayman 60 times in 80 games.
It would really suck for the Bruins if they can't get anything back for him. That would really suck for Boston. I would actually feel bad for Boston.
Vic, can you look up how many years Ullmark has left on his deal?
One year.
He has one. So again, I think that creates, because how much are you really going to give up for a guy if he's only got 1 year left on his deal, unless he's unless he's willing to sign an extension as part of the trade. And how much are you going to give him, period? He's 30, how old? 31? 30 years old. You're probably not wanting to give him more than a 4 or 5 year deal. I mean, that 5 might even be long, but as a UFA, you always overpay and you always over year. So look,
we got Ben Benya asking in the chat. He was supposed to go to LA, right? That was the team that he was rumored to go to at the deadline.
Yeah.
That was the team he denied.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but if I'm
what does Ben mean that I had a Colby narrative drop? What does that mean? You heard it, folks. What, Ben, can you throw in the chat exactly what you're talking about?
Oh, maybe the Swayman starting 58 games or whatever, like that they wouldn't do that.
Well, goaltenders don't play 60
No,
regular
but I think
season
I'm just
games
saying that's what
anymore.
he's probably referring to. Don't attack me.
I'm going to attack you. You know,
Leave
I
me
want to
alone,
attack
man.
you.
Leave me alone, man.
Look, it's something we're going to talk about. It's probably something that's going to happen at the draft late in June or maybe around free agency, you'd think, because again, teams are going to start looking for goaltending. The goaltending market is incredibly thin this summer.
J-Rock just made a really good point in the chat, too.
Incredibly thin. Matt Murray, Ilya Samsonov, Chris Drager, Capo Kakinen, Kevin Lankinen, Casey DeSmith, Eric Comroy, Laurent Brossois, Nedeljkovic, who didn't have a very good world so far, James Reimer, Antti Ranta, Copley, Stolars, Wedgwood, Talbot, mostly backup goaltenders available. So if you're a team that's one goaltender away from being a good team, Linus Ullmark is the guy that you're going heavy and hard against.
Yeah. We had a good comment from J-Rock. He said maybe Swayman was so good in the playoffs because he didn't have to play 60 games. And then
Listen,
Ben answered your question, by the way.
How many goalies play 60 games anymore in the regular season except for Hellebuck? No starters play that many games anymore.
I'm going to look right now.
Where did Ben answer my question?
Here's the list, though. So here are goalies and the amount of games they started in the regular season. UC Saros, 64. Georgiev, 62. Hellebuck, 60. Bobrovsky, 58. Skinner,
Can I
57.
stop you? Can I just stop you right there?
Yeah.
Only guy in the playoffs that's played well of that group is Bob. None of those other guys have had good playoffs.
They're still, Shesterkin played 55.
Okay.
So, who else here?
So if
Oettinger, 53.
Okay, but hold on. So now we're getting into like what? A 50-30 split type of situation.
Yeah.
50 for one, 30 for the other, or it's 82 games, so maybe it's 50 and 32. And that's like a 60-40 split. No, I mean, I'm not a math guy.
No.
That's kind of a 60-40 type of split, correct?
I think it'd be a little bit more than that. I'd say 70-30.
Okay.
Again, not math guys.
65-25. Maybe someone in the chat can help us.
Why is Vic saying the Leafs lead the list?
He's talking about the fact that all those Leafs goaltenders are available as UFAs. We don't have to get too deep down this because these are things that are going to have to be sorted out over time. And I do still want to talk a little bit about Colorado and where they go from here, and then touch on Dallas and Florida. But look, it'll be an interesting story because the one good goaltender that is seemingly available, like legitimately starter, is not a free agent, right? So that means players are going to move. Maybe contract extensions are going to be signed. It's going to have some complexity, and it's going to affect, I think, a number of players in the league because there's going to have to be some sort of package going back to Boston. Maybe it's draft picks, prospect, whatever, who knows, right? So we will keep an eye on that situation, and obviously we'll, maybe it's something we'll ask Frank about tomorrow, although he's been pretty embedded in Western Canada for the last couple of weeks, but it's something that's not going away anytime soon.
I actually am curious, though, if Colorado would be a team that would go after Ullmark, because Georgiev only has 1 year left on his deal as well, and he's a UFA the same time as Ullmark is.
Listen, I think a lot of teams are going to be very interested in Linus Ullmark.
Well, just leading into Colorado, I'm saying too. Like Colorado now has, I believe I just counted 8 UFAs coming up this year.
Cogliano, Drouin, Duhaime, Kiviranta, Trennan, Johnson, Jones, Walker. Like nobody that impactful as a UFA.
Well, Drouin had a pretty impactful season.
But I would assume they're going to want to try to re-sign him. Yeah. Like to me, Walker did not have a great playoff. Again, he had a good year in Philly, but the years before he was like a healthy scratch in LA. So I don't know what they'll do with him. I can't imagine he's going to get a big ticket. That's for sure. The way he kind of finished and played in the playoffs.
And here we go. Charles Ferris snaps to Charles in the chat for giving us the math. 55 games, 67% of the season. 60 games is 73% of the season. But
all right, we're talking about like a 65-25 split. Okay, that's
back to Colorado. Disappointment, yes, of course, but they score 3 goals in 3 games at home in that series. and they were the best home team in the NHL all season long, like literally the best record on home ice. Does that say something about the goaltending? Like, I don't think Georgiev was bad.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't. He wasn't as good as the big time goalies. You know what I mean? Like he wasn't bad, and you certainly can't blame the decor. Look, you've got they're gonna have. I'm looking up their cap friendly right now. It looks like they've got 15 million in cap space, almost 16 million dollars in cap space. But their roster is only at 12 players. Parise retired. Middlestat is an RFA, so he'll get re-signed, but for what, who knows? And then Cogliano, Drouin, Duhaime, Kiviranta, Trennan. Those are mostly bottom six players. McKinnon, Rantanen, Lehkonen, Ross Colton, Miles Wood, and Nikolai Kovalenko are all back next season. And then Makar, Taves, Gerard, and Manson are all locked up for $4.5 million or more. And then Jack Johnson, Caleb Jones, and Sean Walker, they're the UFAs. Who knows what they're going to do? Is Jack Johnson finally going to retire? So they probably have an opportunity to make some changes. The big question mark will be Landeskog. Like, does he come back next year? Because I can't imagine Nichushkin plays for the Avs ever again. I have a hard time seeing that. But I do think Landeskog comes back. And then what happens with Nichushkin's contract? We asked Frank about that on our show last week. It's very unprecedented. That's just going to have to sort itself out, and there's going to be some sort of ruling that comes from that. But Colorado is starting to really remind me of Tampa Bay. And what I mean by that is they won. They paid a bunch of players. They've got, I don't want to say a top heavy roster because Landeskog only makes $7 million. He's not making $10 million. And even Kale is $9 million. He's not $13 million, and Taves is under that, and so on and so forth. But you see, after Colorado won, their roster has been sort of getting picked apart, and they've been bringing in guys like Zach Parise and Middlestat, who never quite figured it out in Buffalo, and they're trying to basically do what Tampa did with Hagel, and then
it's retooling,
retooling, and just sort of reloading and trying to find pieces for bargains and things like that. So I'd say it's a pretty big offseason for McFarland and Sakic. And as to what that roster could look like next year, I do think you're going to see a lot of new names in Colorado.
Yeah, and they're a team that I think people want to go to as well, right? They're not going to struggle to have, or they're not going to struggle to be an attractive landing spot for any UFAs. But the thing is too, that team, being around them a little bit when they were at MSG, like it's a different feel there, it's not like the vibes around the Florida Panthers and around the Colorado Avalanche are two different kinds of swagger. Like, it is insane being in the Panthers road room when they were at MSG. Like, you could tell that team has a lot of fun. They love each other, and they are just straight up having a good time, and they're winning, and it's contagious. Colorado, the energy in that room is like, it's just very business, very serious, not much goofing around. It was, I'd be interested if I was like talking to players if they'd want that vibe. Like, anyone who hasn't won yet, I'm sure would want it. But like, which room would you really rather be in? Like,
I think it's obvious which room you'd rather be in. You want to be in a more fun situation. But again,
that's not for everyone.
But you also don't know. You're seeing them on the road. You're seeing them during the playoffs. Like Nate McKinnon, obviously captain serious. Jared Bednar is a very laid back.
No, I saw them during the regular season.
But again, you're seeing them at the rink, right? And teams have different vibes based on their leadership. I mean, Nate McKinnon, Cale Makar, those guys are quiet, serious.
But I guess the point I was trying to make though, Colby, would Nate be a teammate that you like want to play with? Like, I'm not comparing. Don't twist my words here. Do not twist my words.
Would Nate McKinnon be a teammate I want to play with? Is that what you just said? Because that's not twisting your words.
I'm not done yet. I see, like, from watching and hearing about Nathan McKinnon as a teammate, like, I feel like you get a lot of that Michael Jordan, like, teammate vibe where there's a lot of pressure to play with the guy and to perform with the guy. And if you don't, he'll let you have it. And I don't know if a lot of people want that. So I'm not saying, would you want to play with Nathan McKinnon? I'm saying the pressure of having a teammate like that
But you did say, would you want to
But
play
I
with
wasn't
Nate
done.
McKinnon?
I wasn't done. I was
You're
making the
still saying
Jordan.
it. You're
I was making
creating
the
another
Jordan
narrative,
McKinnon
John.
comparison.
So would I
Because
want to play
teammates
with
said they hated playing with Michael Jordan because of the
best
pressure they
player
put on
in the
him.
world because he puts pressure on you to be really good? Yes, I would want to play with Nate McKinnon in a heartbeat.
But do you think everyone wants that?
And I would want him to push me, and I would want him to push everyone else, and I would want him to hold guys accountable like he holds himself accountable. That's the big thing about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan held everyone accountable to maybe 100% level because he held himself accountable to 500% level. And that's what makes him the greatest of all time at his sport. That is such rarefied air. Okay. And I think that you need guys like that. And you need those types of personalities. And most of the guys who are the superstar-esque players, you think Sidney Crosby's a walk in the park throughout his career to play with? No. Sid has been difficult. He's just found some guys and they've kept them with him a lot of his career. But he's no walk in the park. He holds guys just as accountable in practice. And there's things you don't even see and hear about that happen, especially with guys like Crosby and McKinnon who aren't, going on social media and posting everything and saying a whole lot in interviews. So yeah, I, in a heartbeat, would want to play with Nate McKinnon because honestly, it would up my game. It would make me play better. It would keep me on eggshells in a good way, like a lot of good coaches can do. So I have no problem with that. I really have absolutely no problem with that. And that's in a situation where I think you need to just appreciate elite level greatness because that is
I didn't want that to come off as like a hot take on my end. I was just asking the question as a teammate. Like there's a lot of different.
Well, what about you? Would you want to play with a guy like that?
I would fucking crumble. I would be a disaster with a teammate like that, an absolute disaster. But that's why I never made it to the NHL. I was very, very mentally weak as a player, and I'm not afraid to admit that. Like when I was not confident, I was not fucking confident. But when I was confident, I think I was a pretty good player. But my confidence was easily destroyed by teammates like that or coaches like that. I just never had that in me to be like, I'm gonna fucking prove them wrong. Like I just didn't have that in me.
Well, and Jeremiah, just to comment on your comment in the chat about Michael Jordan letting Dennis Rodman go party in Vegas during the playoffs. Buddy, you're talking about grown millionaires. There, you can control what you can
now
control.
We're talking about the documentary.
You can control what you can control inside of a locker room, but what happens when you leave the locker room, these are grown-ups, okay? And Michael Jordan knew that he needed Rodman on the court come game time. So what he did in his personal life, he let him. Part of being a good leader is knowing what guys' strengths and weaknesses are and letting them do what they need to do away from the rink. So look, that's a different time. But I would argue that point against you, Jeremiah, that, saying that, he didn't hold guys accountable because he let him go to Vegas and party. I just don't agree with that premise. But look, let's keep moving along. Let's talk a little Dallas Stars. We talked about Florida. Look, can we agree? And I know Tyler's not going to like this, but the Florida Panthers, the New York Rangers, and the Dallas Stars look to be in a little bit of a different category than the rest of the teams. Well, I say the rest of the teams, than Vancouver and Edmonton.
Yeah, it's just two teams. Yeah.
I think that those three teams look like they're different. And I think Dallas is going to get to the Stanley Cup Finals, but I don't have a great feel on this Florida-New York Rangers series. I've ridden the Rangers the first couple of rounds. I picked them to win. But this is where I don't know. And I'm not ready to pick against them and put my picks in yet because I know we have to submit those to DFO. But I think it's a hard series to really handicap because I do think these teams are really evenly matched. Like you both got goaltending, you've both got defensive depth, you both got offensive depth.
Good
What's
special
up?
teams.
Special teams has come and gone for both teams at times, right? But there's been a layoff, so we'll see what happens. Let me ask you this question because I just thought about it while I'm talking about depth, Johnny. What's the status of Philip Hedl? Because I saw some stuff coming out of practice yesterday that everybody's almost healthy, and there's a lot of guys chomping at the bit to get in the lineup. Apparently, Blake Wheeler says he's been cleared to play. Can you give us a little health update on some of those New York Rangers players, including Wheeler and Hedl?
Yeah, I wasn't in Heedle's scrum yesterday. I was talking to Wheeler. Wheeler said he's basically good to go. So now it's to the coach, a coach's decision at this point. Also, I did want to address Weinberg 85 said fitting conversation because it's the Oilers' last dance, but I just wanted to read that out loud. I thought that's pretty funny. But yeah, it sounds like everyone's healthy and ready to go. But Philip Heedle wasn't available to the media until yesterday after the game he played in Game 3. So it's been a while since we've talked to Heedle. Sounds like he's healthy and ready to go as well. It seems like everyone's available for the Rangers. And, until Laviolette really says that, he hasn't really said it. And I'm sure he's being careful with the way he gives out those phrases in his press conferences, because there still is 2 days to make a decision on the lineup. But from what I've gathered, it seems like everyone is available for the Rangers. The only 3 guys that didn't skate yesterday, it was a light optional practice, were Adam Fox, Keandre Miller, and Ryan Lindgren. Those are the only 3 guys not on the ice yesterday.
Well, and they generally don't make a guy available who's not healthy and able to play. So that leads you to believe that Philip Heedle should be good to go, and that he wasn't dealing with anything head related, and it was probably a hamstring, a groin, a hip, something.
A long time since he played
would make sense for a guy who hasn't played in a while. And hey, before we keep going, Jeremiah, I will address this as well. You were in the he said, Colby, I'm confident. I know what accountability and good leadership looks like after 25 years in the service, and they aren't always the same. I totally agree with you. And look, your 25 years of service, I know you've seen and done and been a part of things that I can't even, fathom. First off, how much we appreciate your service. You and I have talked about that, live and in other. And so we do appreciate and love you for that. And I don't even slightly doubt that and have seen these things. And I agree they're not 2 different things. But again, I'm not basing everything off of a documentary either for how I shape and feel it. A lot of it comes from being in Chicago, talking to people, being around. So, look, we can agree on some of it. We don't have to agree on all of it. And that's all good. But back with the Rangers, Johnny, let me ask you, are you confident? Like, how do you see this series playing out? Who are you picking? I know fan Johnny wants to see the Rangers win, but are they going to win? Are they good enough to win? Are they, is Florida just too good? Are they the juggernaut that everybody says they are?
So here's one thing that I think is an interesting talking point as well. The Rangers, so I have Rangers in 7, and I think this series goes 7 no matter what. I think this is somewhat of a coin flip. I think these teams are pretty much even, right? Like goaltending, you can say Shesterkin's better, but Bob's just as good. Power play, the Rangers have been better on the power play, but Florida's power play to me is still just as scary.
But it's been quite a few days since they've played.
I'm giving Florida's power play full credit. I'm just saying statistically the Rangers have been better. Like, I think Florida and Carolina are pretty similar, but I'm taking Barkov, Reinhart, Tkachuk, and Verhaeghe over Aho, Gensel, Svechnikov, and Natchez, who would be the 4th guy. Like, I think Florida is way more dangerous than Carolina because they have guys that actually
offensively.
Yes, but the style is similar.
They go to the hard areas. Florida as good as anyone,
but the style is similar. And I think here's something that I was talking yesterday with a bunch of the media members in the locker room. The Rangers are playing 7 home games in this series. They just went to Carolina and they won 2 out of 3 games in what is arguably the hardest road environment to play in the playoffs. Carolina's crowd is incredible. The Rangers, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, it will be 55-45 in favor of the Florida Panthers fans at these games. The Rangers fans will storm that arena.
Yeah.
Like they always do.
Did you see what Florida did? They released tickets, but you have to have a Florida address, and then they're going to re-release more the next day. But it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. There's so many New York transplants.
Well, and there's all the snowbirds down there. Yeah, exactly. Like my mom, we're from Philly. My mom lives in Boca, right? Yeah. Like she lives in Florida. So there's been some people are asking Shesterkin or Bob in goal.
I'm taking Shesterkin 10.
I'm taking Shesterkin too. I am too. It's close, but I'm taking Shesterkin there. Look, can I tell you a couple of things that I think are the X factors in this series? And you're gonna laugh at this. I think Lafreniere has to be one of the X factors. I think if you get the Lafreniere that played that 3-game stretch and had 4 goals, but was just noticeably forechecking, winning puck battles, creating for his line mates, not just relying on, the guys that he plays with to make the plays, Trocheck and Panarin. If he can do that, then I think, again, that's an X factor type of player. I think Philip Hedl on the third line, potentially even moving up to the top line, if Roslovic is as wildly inconsistent as he's been, I think that can be another X factor. I think they start him in the bottom of the lineup, give him 12, 13 minutes, make sure he can play, on an every other night situation. But I think those two guys can be major difference makers because Florida just comes at you. They just they come at you and they come at you and they create offense from so many different lines. I saw someone in the chat said, what do you make of the Athletics poll? 65% of the people picked the Florida Panthers. I don't think most people in the Athletic have a clue about hockey.
Dude,
So
they had 66-34 last round for the Rangers.
I couldn't care less what the Athletic writers have to say, nor do I think any of them actually watch hockey or know anything about hockey. For the most part, there are exceptions to that. Let's see what other comments.
Joe Albanese had a good point because the Rangers' third line of Will Cooley, Capo Caco, and Alex Wennberg, they are a line that has been very strong defensively, but they have not scored goals.
You need a little bit of depth scoring.
You need a little bit of that. You need a little bit of that. Like their third line, if they can get going, they could be a big difference maker. But Florida's depth is also just
And J Rock said Panarin is the real X factor. Well, look, I think that's a fair comment. But if you've got Lafreniere going and he's a threat, and Trocheck's playing that two-way 200-foot game, it gives Panarin a little bit more time and space. And if they want to keep an extra, bit of attention to Panarin, well, then Lafreniere can break out. And I think that's the difference. And look, I know I'm hard on Lafreniere, and it's your fault because you're so soft on him.
I haven't even said anything about the guy.
But he can't be the guy who is the last 3 games of the series, he was pretty invisible. He needs to be the guy that is creating. I don't care if he scores every night, but he's got to be impactful offensively, okay? Because you can't have a one guy on a line that's really, you're just like, okay, it's got to be Panarin. It's got to be Panarin, especially against that D-core in Florida, because they got 3 good pairs. They've got 3 good defensive pairs in Florida.
Well, here's the one thing that I fear.
And here's one more thing. Adam Fox getting these days off is huge.
I was going to go there.
He's clearly been banged up. So the rest will be immensely important for him.
So that's what I was going to say. My biggest concern is that Florida absolutely abuses the Rangers' blue line. Like you look at Florida and the way those guys forecheck, the way they hound, and the way they finish hits. Guys like Tkachuk and Bennett. Those are 2 guys that obviously stand out, right? Like they're the ones that, they make guys pay. You can make the case for a guy like Lomberg too, if he's in the lineup or not. I'm not sure what they're going to do as far as their lineup goes.
I would think they'll keep Lomberg in now that they brought him back in for 6 and they won. He'll start the series in.
Cousins was in too, right?
Cousins came back in, Lomberg came back in, and Okposo and Lorentz went out.
Mm-hmm. So if Fox is, hurting the way that a lot of people think he is, he's going to have to battle. And, those guys are going to make him pay. They're going to finish every hit on him. They're not ones to shy away from throwing the body. So that's where my one concern is the Rangers breaking out the puck, knowing that these guys are coming to lay them the fuck out.
Yeah. Listen, you got to get back on hard on pucks. If you're
like Carolina, they're good and they pressure well, but they didn't necessarily finish as hard as what Florida will.
Johnny,
they are a physical team.
Thomas Schultz is asking, do you play Rempe in game 1? Well, here's all I can tell you, Thomas. Whatever Johnny says you should do, Lavi will do the opposite, because that is literally that is how it's gone this playoff year for Johnny when it comes to Matt Rempe. Is whatever he says they're going to do, Lavi does the opposite. So go ahead, Johnny. Put your Peter Laviolette hat on. Is Matt Rempe in the lineup game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals?
I'm saying no because I want him to play. So I'm saying no, and he will be. Do you see what I'm doing? Reverse jinx. I'm saying no because I want him to play.
So you think that he has an impact against Florida in game 1?
I just think he's got to be in there for game 1 and just like setting the tone, you know? Like it's game 1. It's game 1 is set the tone. I don't think game 1's not a must win.
You're such an idiot.
All
All
right.
right.
You know what
so,
I'm saying though? But you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Game 1 won't cause any harm.
Yes and no, but again, I think that you've got to find physicality from other players. I think you get into the Eastern Conference Finals. I think everybody finishes hits in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think everybody has to forecheck hard. And I think against the Florida Panthers, you need to be able to play 4 lines. This series, in my opinion, is going 7 games. We could see overtimes. They're going to be tight checking games. They're going to be physical games up and down the lineup. And so I just think that you need to be able to put someone on the 4th line who can give you 12 minutes or 9 or 10 minutes and maybe kill penalties like Gaudreau does, right? I think you need more of that unless you're looking at it as, look, we'll get Rempe in. He'll give us 5 minutes and I'll get more shifts for Panarin and I'll get more shifts for Loff and I'll get, and then he takes his top 6 and he finds more ice time for those guys in the bottom of the lineup because they won't play Rempe the second half of any game. I worry about the pace Florida plays, and I know that he's not a bad skater.
I don't think they're faster than Carolina.
But can he really get up and down the ice with that level of heaviness and that pace? I don't know. I just don't know the answer to that.
Well, he did play in the regular season against Florida, and I will say every time Brandon Montour had the puck and Rempe was out there, he was aware. You know, Montour felt it. So, you know, and I think the one game, you know, this is regular season, whatever, but the one game Rempe did play against Florida this year, the Rangers, that was the one game they beat Florida. And I'm not saying that was all because of him, but
no, I understand. You're just saying it was mostly because of him.
Exactly. I actually didn't see you going there, and that was pretty good.
Well, look, I still don't. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
And as soon as I make my pick, I will.
Should we bet on the series? You want to just take Florida and we can do something?
No, I'm not. Because to be honest with you, I might be one of the people picking the Rangers for this series. I might. I don't know yet. I have to submit my picks to Matt Larkin. I don't know if you've already submitted your picks.
I did.
I want to see what happens tonight before I make my pick, although I'm going to continue to stick with Dallas.
I said, so with Larkin, I said Rangers in 7 and Dallas in 6, no matter who the opponent is.
Got it. So I'm just not sure yet. I really am. I don't know if it's as everybody's saying Florida is just going to steamroll and keep going outside of New York, but I've watched a lot of New York in the playoffs and I've been really impressed. And even with the little sort of, you know, speed bump they hit in that series, I actually think the adversity that they faced against Carolina helps them a lot in 100%. This next series and moving on. We always talk about the lessons you learn in the playoffs. How about when you can learn a hard lesson?
Yesterday.
How about when you can learn a hard lesson and win? That is huge.
I asked Laviolette that yesterday. Like, how do you know, we talked last week about desperation and he had a really great response. His responses to me lately have been unbelievable, honestly. But he talked about how desperation isn't something that you can force. You actually have to feel it. And they finally felt it, you know, come game 6. Like, they're like, hey, our backs are against the wall now because if we lose this game, we got a game 7. So, you know, I asked him how you can kind of carry that desperation from, you know, games 4, 5, and 6 into this series. And he basically, what?
I don't think you can. What did he say?
No, he was like, these are the things that they leave scars on you. They make you tougher. Like it's not a desperation thing, but knowing that you went through it, you can channel that.
And that's kind of what I've been saying here.
Exactly. So you and Peter Laviolette are the same. You should be the head coach.
I think that series is going to be, you know, worth its weight in gold. I really do. I think that's going to be an awesome series. As soon as I make my pick, I'll let you guys know. Maybe on the show tomorrow we can talk about that a little bit. Before we do our Betway bet of the day,
we gotta get to that because Vic's gonna kill us.
I do want to throw a little bit of love to the Fargo Force in the USHL. The Clark Cup playoffs, which is in the United States Hockey League, they wrapped up. Fargo won the series in 4 games, I believe it was. In a best of, Fargo won the first 2 games at home. They lost game 3 in Dubuque, and they won game 4 in Dubuque. They won the series 3-1. Max Swanson was the USHL playoff MVP and also player of the year. He's going to be USA Hockey's junior player of the year, and he's ranked about 150th for Central Scouting for the upcoming NHL draft. I believe he's committed to go to North Dakota. Just give a little bit of love to the Dubuque Fighting Saints. One of my former teammates, Kirk McDonald, is their head coach. Played with him in the American League. He's a big up-and-comer. I'm not going to be surprised to see him coaching either. He was a head coach in the East Coast League. He will find his way to the American League soon, in my opinion, and then probably onto an NHL bench. So keep an eye on that name, Kirk McDonald. The coach for Fargo is Brett Skinner. He played some games in the NHL. I know he played in Colorado. Their GM, Kerry Eads, congratulations to him. Big North Dakota hockey family. You know that name, coached back in the day for North Dakota. So wanted to give a little bit of love to that league, especially after the fact that we absolutely murdered the OHL last week for their ridiculousness with that 5-game suspension. And so, congratulations to the Fargo Force. Great season for the USHL. That hockey just continues to get better and better. More and more kids committing, going to the NCAA, then going on to the NHL than we've ever seen before. So just wanted to give that love out there, Johnny, before we got into our Betway bet of the day. And I'm going to go into Betway unless you've got anything else you wanted to talk about. So
keep firing, Colby.
So let's look at our pick tonight. This is from our guest picker, Tyler Yaremchuk. And don't forget, with Betway, they're going to reimburse you up to $200 on your first bet. Create an account by using the QR code on your screen. That will load up your account to this great promo. Make your bet. If it doesn't hit, they'll reimburse you up to $200. You can immediately use that $200 to continue to bet on the different sports happening, sprinkle it across a couple of different sports, bet on the NHL playoffs, whatever you're into, get involved, use the promo, available only outside of Ontario, and always play responsibly. Don't bet the lunch money. Don't bet the kids' college tuition. Make sure you stay away from that type of stuff. And Tyler Yaremchuk giving us the Warren Foegele anytime goal. This is juicy, plus 375. Make sure you watch DFO Live today and make sure Tyler is using this Warren Foegele bet on DFO Live as well. Make sure he's not sandbagging on our show in order to throw some heat down, because Johnny's creating all these horrible narratives about the Edmonton Oilers and their playoff series.
I'm going to be in his ear all night.
We have been pretty hot lately. We're running like 5 out of 9 on our last bets, or 5 out of 8, I believe, on our last 8. I think we hit Thursday's bet too, because I remember you texting me pretty late about that. So get involved with Betway. They're important to our show. If you haven't liked our episode today, I know it's been a long one, give a like. If you don't subscribe to the DFO YouTube page, make sure you do. Again, these are all things that help us as we start looking into year 2 of our show. The other thing we want to let you all know while we have you right now is we're probably going to do a show on Friday this week and not Monday.
Next week.
I'm sorry. Is that not this week? That's this week.
I thought we were doing next Friday, not next Monday.
Okay, so we
still do 4 and 4.
Apparently we still have some details that we need to iron out, but we will not have a show on Monday, which will be Memorial Day. That we know for sure. We might go just till Thursday this week, and then go next Friday. Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Friday, Thursday, Friday next week. So we'll catch you all up on that as the week moves along. But we did want to give you plenty of time in advance to know that we're going to take Monday off for Memorial Day. Johnny will probably be at the practice facility trying to sit in Lafreniere's stall and take pictures.
I'll be
at the beach. I'll be down the shore, the New Jersey shore, with my family. So we'll be watching hockey, but we will not have a live episode for you on Monday, which is Memorial Day. Johnny,
I'll be at the Elbow Room in Fort Lauderdale for game 3 and 4 in Florida.
The Elbow Room and the Lollipop, you'll just be going back and forth between the two. So anyways, we'll tell you guys later. We appreciate today. We had a really good audience today. You guys were super active in the chat. I know we went an hour and a half. That's never really our plan, but sometimes we just get going and
we're punishing Vic.
We have to tell, because Vic has a Monday morning meeting at 10 a.m., which he's now 30 minutes late for. Sorry about that, Vic. I know you had a fun weekend in Montreal. Johnny, We asked everybody to like and subscribe. I will say this. I've noticed the likes on our episode on YouTube have been a lot higher. So we do appreciate that. We do see that. Leave a review if you're an audio only person. If you're a Spotify, if you're Apple iPod or Apple Podcasts, whatever, Jesus, leave us a review. Tell it, throw us the 5-star review if you like us. If you don't, and you want to do a lower review, well then don't leave it. All right. We're not interested in your bad reviews, only your good reviews. All right. Anything else, Johnny? I'll give you a final word because I've been going.
No, that was a great close to the show. Snaps to Colby. Fun one today. Great start to the week. And we'll see you all tomorrow. Everyone enjoy the Game 7 tonight. So big thanks to the chat. Thanks to Vic. And are we both on team Go Oil here, Colby? What are we rooting for the Oilers?
Yeah, I'd like to see the Oilers win.
Same.
Because I want to see Connor McDavid play. This is a guy who, again, I hate staying up that late, but I stay up late to watch him because he's just, I want Connor McDavid in a Stanley Cup final. I really do. I don't think there's any way it's happening this year, but I want that guy playing on ABC on national television in America, and I want people to see it because casual hockey fans don't know enough about Connor McDavid, and they need to watch this guy play.
I agree. And let's end it with that. Oilers in 7. It was always Oilers in 7, even if it's a Mickey Mouse 7. But we're going to end the show
You're an idiot.
with that. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Saravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic content, so hit that subscribe